Noto, or returning the sword to the sire, is largely a functional thing, especially with schools or training techniques like Iaido, where drawing the sword, making your cutting, your killing blows, and then returning the sword to the sire is fundamental. Therefore, there have been lots of different ways formulated or made where the sword is returned in different styles. Different schools will have variations where the motion speeds up or slows down or is done very fast. Experienced people can tell which school a certain noto has come from, depending on the way that it's performed, depending on which noto is done after which particular cut. As cutters, we don't have those sort of restrictions, and to a certain degree we don't have to worry about noto so much, because the majority of the stuff that we do is with the sword drawn. We're concentrating on getting the cuts. Every time we make those movements, those cuts, there's a good chance, especially when we're learning something new, that we're not going to make it. We're going to mess it up. The idea of always perfectly returning the sword to the sire after every fluff up is, I'd like to do that, and I'd like to think in a perfect world that I did that, but it's not true. I get frustrated, and I've already done this or attempted this particular double or returning 27 times. The last thing I'm going to be thinking about is putting the sword as such, flipping it over, bringing the sire forward, maintaining zanshin. I am goal oriented, shall we say, and I can't put that extra time in and feel like I'm doing something productive. If I want to be training noto, then I'm going to put in the time separate to my cutting. It's going to be an event on its own. I'm going to go into the garden, I'm going to zone out, I'm going to do noto. And it is very relaxing, and I do enjoy it. And after I've done this, training out in the garden for say 20 minutes, half hour, maybe more at a time, doing one or two different noto styles, it's something that I can add to my repertoire. And after I've done a particularly good cut, or I feel that I've done something fantastic, which isn't often but it does happen, I've got a handful of noto that I know that look nice and that feel good to perform. And as cutters, that's what we're often going for. We're not as zen as the people that are practicing some form of bato or iaijutsu or iaido or anything like that. I can't speak for everyone. I'm just one person, but I do find that I do suffer from this flaw where I just want to put the targets back up and try again until I get that bloody cut, because sometimes you have been trying for days, you've gone through hundreds of bottles, and until that cut sinks in. And if I had been doing noto properly for every single time, well, having said all this, the noto that I wanted to go over today is one that I have been working on. It returns the sword to the sire from a reversed grip on the right hand side. It's all nice and easy. It uses your right hip to balance the sword as you step forward, or as you bring the sword around and you step forward. Everything seems to flow. And also, as is important to me anyway, the first part of the noto, before the actual sheathing, can be done fast, and then the sheathing can be done slow and safely, because no one enjoys a trip to hospital. And that's pretty much it. I'll try and go over exactly what's happening. Once you've seen it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I get it. But I will try and go through it step by step and show you what I've come up with. It is a bastardization of an existing noto, well, of several existing notos, but then what isn't? It feels comfy for me, and maybe you'll like it too, or maybe you'll modify it heavily, and I quite enjoy seeing that. Anyway, let's get on with the actual thing. Cheers. Okay, for this noto I'm going to be using this sword. This was originally intended to be a cheap beta sword, but it turned out to be so horrible I retired it. It's not particularly sharp. I don't intend for it to be sharp really ever again. It will cut the odd bottle, but it's not going to slice my fingers off, hopefully, should I make a mistake. If you've got any ito or something like that, then I suggest using that. Otherwise, just, you know, I mean, be careful, we're all grown up, right? Sort of. As always, I let one belt loop out so that I've got that flexibility. If you've got this flexibility here, you're going to find noto that much easier, because it's as much about putting the sword back into the sire as it is about putting the sire over the sword. Okay? We're going to be working, like I said, from a reverse grip, and essentially what you're going to be doing is bringing the sword around your finger like that. Okay, so if when you start you balance the sword almost on your hip and you bring it across here, okay, you can shift the sire out a little bit if you want, and you use your finger or the knuckle to spin the sword back around like that. Okay, when you do it slow it doesn't look so nice, but all you're doing is spinning it around your finger and then pushing the sire back and over the sword. So what we need to do as well as this is to take a step forward, and as we do that the whole motion becomes a lot easier. Okay, now let's try that one more time. You have your sword in reverse grip, take a step forward, sword comes out, and then you roll the sword around the knuckle, and then you'll find you're in the normal position for noto. It's that simple. Of course, when you string it all together, it starts to look a little bit smoother. It does take a bit of practice, because obviously, well, I mean, it took me a lot of practice because I was working it out, but as I said, it starts off fairly fast and then slows down for the actual sheathing, because that's the bit where you really have to watch your fingers. So, step forward, around, and into the sire, like that. Step forward, around, into the sire. Remember to balance it on your hip as you bring it around, like that. I suppose when you're stepping out, it makes it easier to balance it on your hip as well, up until the point where you're ready to spin it. So if when you step forward, essentially, I mean, it will slide down your leg, but you know, you're balancing it on there, and then you're just lifting it up and around. And that's it, that's all there is to it. I found that this was useful because I've been doing reverse grip stuff, and you know, turning the sword around in order to do noto is a pain in the bum. I hope that made everything clear.